Hello everyone, I'm Caterina Scarponi, and today I will present a topic that has become of great interest in European politics, especially over the last decade, namely the interference of Russia with EU politics and its relationship with European populist and nationalist parties. As a start, it is necessary to mention that relations between Russia and the European Union have been very turbulent since the Cold War and after its end. These actors are, in fact, characterized by entirely different political systems and values, with conservative Russia on one side and post-materialist EU on the other. Furthermore, a series of Russian army interventions in Transnistria, Chechnya, Georgia, and Ukraine have worsened the situation by increasing mutual suspicion, misperception, and paranoia between the two parts. These tensions are reflected in Russia's foreign policy towards the European Union, which builds from the assumption that, as such, the EU is a threat to Russian national interests. Excluding the possibility of an openly confrontational foreign policy, Russia has undertaken a more subtle but nonetheless aggressive foreign policy aimed at destabilizing from the inside not only the EU, but the Western idea of democracy as a whole, weakening the Euro-Atlantic nexus and undermining the US hegemony as well. The focal point of this strategy is for Russia to expand its political influence in Europe by creating a pro-Russian lobby ready to legitimize Russia's action and rally against disciplinary measures like economic sanctions. The Kremlin's goal in this sense is not to help a particular candidate or party to victory, but to delegitimize the democratic process as such. If this is Russia's foreign strategy towards the EU, what is important to assess is how exactly is Russia interfering with European politics and how should the European Union react to tackle this challenge. To answer these questions, today's presentation will be divided in two parts. Part one will examine Russia's attraction through soft power, while part two will analyze Russia's interference with key elections in Europe. Regarding attraction through soft power, a first issue to highlight is the role of conservative values. Against an EU that identifies itself as post-materialist, cosmopolitan, and multicultural, Russia is adopting a stance according to which Europe has become too gay, too tolerant, too permissive in its morals, and too unchristian. In contrast, Russia portrays itself as characterized by the respect of traditional and conservative values and by a stronger and more authoritarian leadership. This idea represents a functional model for the far-right and nationalist movements in Europe. For example, Matteo Salvini, leader of the Italian autonomist party Northern League, has identified Putin as the reference model for the party's political action and called for a strategic synergy with him to counterbalance the moral and political decay of the West. A common thread in this sense is the increasing use of Christian language and imagery and concerns in the populist narrative. I have chosen to show a video from a very recent rally of Italian populist parties as an example of the rhetoric utilized in connection to Christianity and conservative values.
Adesso chiaramente riparlano di togliere la dicitura padre e madre dai documenti, perché la famiglia è un nemico, l'identità nazionale è un nemico, l'identità nazionale è un nemico,
Okay. In addition to conservative values, the Russian soft power focuses on nationalist rhetoric, according to which countries should gain back their sovereign power and prioritize the protection of their social and political interests over free market and capitalism. At European level, this translates into strong opposition to further EU supranational integration at the political and social level. What is worrying is the fact that even inside EU institutions, the support for populist, nationalist and Eurosceptic parties has grown over time, from 151 combined seats in the European Parliament in 2018, as you can see in this picture, to 171 in 2019. Finally, an increasing role is being played by the phenomenon of personification of politics, defined by Rahat and Schaeffer as a process in which the political weight of the individual actor in the political process increases over time, while the centrality of the political group or political party declines. Looking at Russia today, no one would dispute that power lies firmly in the hands of President Vladimir Putin and within an inner circle of few individuals who monopolized control of the media and marginalized potential competitors both in and out of government. Even in the heart of Europe, leaders are taking steps to follow Putin's model and enhance their power at the expense of political allies. Commonly cited examples of the growth of personalism in European politics are Hungary's Viktor Orban and Poland's Jarosław Kaczynski. This phenomenon is predicted to increase as the spread of populist sentiments across Europe is fueling public demand for parties and leaders to exert the virtues of strong and decisive leadership. Therefore, worth monitoring will be the role of Marine Le Pen in France, Matteo Salvini in Italy, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and Christine Strache in Austria, as well as Orban and Kaczynski in Hungary and Poland, as mentioned before. Passing now to part 2, we will analyze how this relation between Russia and European populist parties has materialized in the context of European elections. The issue to assess first is the functioning of Russia's propaganda and misinformation campaign. We have a video in which Alina Polikova from the Center of European Policy Analysis analyzes past disinformation campaigns and political warfare tools employed by hostile foreign actors in Russia and elsewhere.
Information warfare is to create a society in which we can't tell the difference between fact and fiction. This is the underlying broader objective of these kinds of information operations. Some of the tools that the Russian government has used really signals that they are increasingly becoming more sophisticated in mastering the tools of political warfare for the digital age. In the very near term, in the next few months, we're definitely going to see more and more disinformation campaigns, including fake websites being set up that kind of work together to spread disinformation, including fake personalities and entities being set up on Twitter, Facebook, and including manipulation of some of these social media networks algorithms, including Google, YouTube, and others. We're not really paying attention to that. The more frightening developments that we're likely going to see in the next 12 to 16 months, or maybe even less, the use of artificial intelligence in these tools of political warfare. So right now, we are seeing a lot of human control of these bot accounts on Twitter and social media, but very, very soon, this is going to become much more automated to the extent to which we won't be able to tell the difference between automated accounts and non-automated accounts so much. It's not enough to fix the creation of fake videos, fake audio, that the human eye cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is false is going to become a reality much sooner than we're comfortable with.
So the phenomenon of fake news has increased in parallel to the increase of the use of social networks. And Russia has mastered the use of this tool to spread its narrative of a morally decayed EU on the brink of collapse and to exploit division in Western societies. Up to date, fake news disinformation campaigns have appeared mainly in 6 European elections. The Brexit referendum in 2016, the German elections, French elections, Dutch elections of 2017, the Italian elections of 2018, and the European Parliament elections of 2019. During these elections, the propaganda and disinformation has been accompanied by efforts at strategic funding to empower Europe's far-right and Eurosceptic parties. 2 episodes stand out in particular. In 2017, during the French presidential elections, Russia extended a €9 million loan to Marine Le Pen's National Front to finance her campaign. At the time, party officials turned to Jean-Luc Schaffhauser, a member of the European Parliament elected as part of Le Pen's party bloc, to organize a possible deal with Russia's First Czech Bank. For years, Schaffhauser wanted to build an alliance between Europe and Russia to act, he said, as a Christian front against Asia and the Middle East. A similar deal has been signed in 2017 with the Austrian Freedom Party. While it is still unclear if the 5-year cooperation agreement with Russia will also entail financial cooperation, it is important to note that the party has long taken a pro-Russia stance, calling for an end to European Union sanctions against Moscow imposed over the annexation of Crimea and the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Russian support, similar to the one offered to Marine Le Pen's party, therefore does not appear as unlikely. Finally, we turn to the last part of this presentation, hacking and denial of service attacks. Cases of Russian sabotage of Western computer systems date back to 2007, when Russia undertook a wide-scale denial of service attack to Estonia, and over the years affected countries such as Germany, Bulgaria, France, and Poland. These attacks are retraceable back to 2 main Russian hacktivist groups, APT-28 or Fancy Bear and APT-29 or Cozy Bear. While the targets and methods of these groups are similar, the first one is linked to the main Directorate of General Staff of the Armed Force, and the second one is linked to the Federal Security Service and the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. These 2 groups have been rather active in European politics, and especially in the 2 countries at the heart of the European Union, Germany and France. In 2014, APT-28 undertook a distributed denial of service attack on the German Bundestag, with more than 5,600 computers affected and 12,000 users for several weeks. The hackers also used malware, managing to steal 16 gigabytes of sensitive data. In 2015, APT-28 targeted French television network TV5 Monde with the alias of Cyber Caliphate and hacked the company's channels, administrative and support system, and social media for several hours. These attacks may have been an attempt to test forms of cyber weaponry in sight of upcoming European elections. In fact, most importantly, in 2017, APT-28 targeted the election in France and Germany, and specifically the election campaigns of Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel. Macron's campaign was attacked through phishing and malware on the site, and the same type of attacks were directed to the German Konrad Adenauer Foundation, associated to Merkel CDU, and Friedrich Herbert Foundation, associated to the SPD. What is notable in both cases is that only the populist parties were spared from these attacks. National Front and Alternative für Deutschland's campaigns were completely unaltered. To conclude, in order to react to the new challenges coming from Russia, the EU has adopted a strategic communication to counteract propaganda against it by third parties and a recommendation to the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and to the Council in 2016 and 2018, respectively. As highlighted in these documents, it will be increasingly important for the European Union to focus on resilience measures, for example, by conducting regular vulnerability analysis and developing contingency plans, to issue public statements to deter threat actors and educate voters about disinformation campaigns, to train and educate political parties to better protect against potential interference, to conduct government media dialogue, encourage media to take voluntary protective measures, and engage social media companies such as Facebook or Twitter in mitigating potential threats, and finally, to support international cooperation and particularly the sharing of lessons learned and best practices. Most importantly, however, it will be important for the Union to understand that disinformation campaigns are most effective in already divided and destabilized societies. The EU should take stance of the reasons behind the rise of populist parties and the changing public opinion to act promptly when social discontent arises. And that will be the safest way to tackle the challenges coming from populist parties and from Russia itself. So we've made it to the end of this presentation. I hope everything was clear enough. If you have any questions, I think you can raise them in the forum. And thank you for bearing with me through this presentation, and see you soon.